Welcome to Ctrl Alt Dev, the podcast for people building software, scaling businesses, and staying sane while AI reshapes everything. I'm Paul Rhodes, founder of Green Gorilla Apps. We build software that helps businesses automate the manual and unlock their next stage of growth.
And I'm Sean Sale. I'm the founder of Just Applications. We've been building digital tools and SaaS products for almost 2 decades. And now we're pulling back the curtains on what works, what doesn't, and how we're evolving with it.
In today's episode, we're unpacking why we charge for specifications, aka paid discovery. If you've ever asked or been asked, can I get a quick quote? This one's for you.
And we'll share our lessons from the trenches, the architect analogy we always come back to, and just how asking better questions up front changes the entire outcome.
So, Sean, what's been going on in your world this week?
Sure, Paul. Well, this week we've been doing some classic tech sleuthing with one of our customers who uses our platform AdLister. For those who haven't heard of it, AdLister is a tool we developed to help businesses easily manage and update their product listings, including images, descriptions, prices across platforms like Magento, eBay, Amazon, and TikTok, all from one place. So basically, it saves loads of time and keeps everything in sync. Now, the customer noticed that when uploading product images through AdLister, the main image appears perfectly on the product page, but weirdly, it's not showing as a thumbnail on the homepage, Paul. Cut the mysterious music. So we're currently looking into this because, of course, it's always our fault, isn't it? Everything's our fault. And obviously, we just need to look into it more because it's Magento. So Magento just isn't displaying the thumbnail where it should. So now we're checking if it's a caching issue, a delayed sync, or something else behind the scenes. It's one of those cases where Magento gives nothing away, like a moody detective in a noir film. And of course, it's my 3rd week, Paul, recovering from COVID. So I'm still a bit wheezy. I'm still coughing like an old motorbike, but I'm on the mend and almost there now. 80%, I think I am now.
Wow, I'd rather take 80% than anything else. It did get me thinking, though. I did wonder if you were just ill from doing a 10K last week.
Yeah, well, I don't think it helped. I think that certainly didn't help. So, and also we've been speaking with a new customer who needs a mobile app for their field workers to capture 360 images and video on site, complete with geotagging, timestamps and location data. So this kind of conversation we're having today is really, really important in terms of the discovery phase. So, cool. Paul, in turn, in the confession booth, what's gone brilliantly or blown up for you this week?
Well, I think I was thinking about this before we came on, and we've actually won an award this week, or I've won an award, which was pretty cool. So,
come on, then.
I belong to like a marketing entrepreneurial group, and I won Entrepreneur of the Month, which is
yes.
I didn't know whether to raise it or not, but I was like, no, well, I've got the certificate by my bedside. I need to find somewhere to put it. But that was really nice. So we got that for some marketing activity and kind of sales stuff that we've been doing, which is really cool. And then the other big thing we've been doing in the business is implementing scorecards. So we have a scorecard for the business performance that gets updated every week and enables us to like change direction and strategy. But we don't have them across the teams and across the different individuals. So we're working on an automated solution for that. So that's been really good from a strategic thing. And then I, following the theme of meeting people in pubs for conversations, I met one of our mutual friends, Luke, yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Box Software. So he was singing your praises, Sean. So that was a really good conversation just about tech in general and AI and everything.
Yeah, he's a good guy, isn't he? He's done some really good software.
He's got an amazing like little story. So I've said to him, we're going to have guests on this podcast and stuff. So we'll extend an invite to Luke, which would be cool. But other than that, I've had 2 discovery calls this week that proved why we charge for specs and prompted this conversation with me and you. So, I think there's a huge gap between what clients are asking for and what they actually need. So it's the perfect time to talk about this subject, really.
Yeah, well, let's start with the obvious then, and I'll kick off. And the question is, why do we charge when others don't? So the short answer, because those so-called free quotes usually end up costing someone, and 9 times out of 10, it's the client. And when you skip the proper discovery phase, you're working on assumptions that leads to vague specs, scope creep, missed expectations, and eventually someone pointing the finger when things don't go to plan. So we charge for discovery specs to protect everyone. So it's the client pool, it's us, the developers, and the sanity of the whole project. And I think using it's like building a house. You wouldn't just say to a builder, I want a kitchen, surprise me, because you might end up with a pizza oven in the bathroom or a fridge in the garden. No, I'm being a bit unfair there. Of course I am. Of course they're using proper drawings up front, but in software, especially in our world, that doesn't always happen. And let's be honest, Paul, after 30 years of building software, you and I can sniff out a vague brief from a mile off. But even so, discovery isn't just fluff, is it?
100%.
So we might not be the ones writing everything on the code, because you and I don't anymore. It's our brainiac developers that do that job. But what's supposed to be done, in terms of the discovery phase is, who's going to use it? Does it talk to any APIs? Does it need a database? Where does it all start and where should it end? And that's deep work. And getting it wrong early means you're building the wrong thing really efficiently. So it's timely. We're about this week. It's all about discovery session for a mobile app. We talked about that Capture 360 that we're looking at the moment. So we got to look into all sorts of different things. We've got to look into the cameras SDK, offline syncing, geo-tagging. So with that a discovery phase, if I just stood up and said, it's going to cost you £25,000, Mr. Customer, we're probably going to build the wrong thing and then fixing it after launch at 5 times the extra cost. So Paul, what about you?
It's a really good framing already. I mean, like you've duplicated a lot of what I was going to say, which is always good. But I think it goes back to experience as well. Like you touched on, like we've been doing this a while, and I remember the times when we didn't. So it's like the juxtaposition, isn't it? It's like I remember that one of the prompts, you're exactly right. It is about protecting the outcome, protecting the client, protecting their sales. So in absence of charging, what would happen is we would skip vital processes. So in order to do the feasibility work that you've just described, like different SDKs and things, it requires time. So when ultimately you are given the opportunity to invest loads of deep thinking time to answer questions that haven't been asked and to fully work out the feasibility of something, you skip it. You just do. With a free quote, if someone's going to send you a paragraph, you're going to put a paragraph's worth of work into it. Do you know what I mean? So it's kind of, and I think you touched on some really salient points. And I think for us, we've always had this kind of thing of there's two real outcomes to a quote request. You can have the fag packet, you can have like the finger in the air, loose, casual, guaranteed to create tension later on. And you said at the expense of the client and the team, where it's based on complete assumptions and it's largely based on similar projects that we might have done in the past. And that's what we can give you. And we always get the classic thing of, and don't worry, I won't hold you to account on it. However, they do. Like just by even saying that, that they will. Or you can go down the route that you've described, which is a proper spec. It's planned out, it's pulled apart. You act as a bit of a devil's advocate. You ask why a lot, and you say, well, tell me more about that process. And the spec gets rebuilt, refined. It's all pulled apart, and it's but ultimately it's clarity, isn't it? It's like you said, you don't end up with, I love the fridge in the kitchen or the pizza oven in the garden or whatever. But like it's everyone's on the same page. And I think when somebody initially has a conversation with a development company, we might be saying the same things, but what I might have in my head and what they might have in their head are completely worlds apart. And that's where it all kind of falls apart. So I think for us, it's we charge for a spec because we want to put the quality time into it and the deep thought into it. And if the end of it you don't work with us, at least you've got all your answers. And sometimes it even stops the project dead. You work out it's actually not commercially viable. So it's a de-risk all around, like you said.
Yeah, well, I think that's true. I think a lot of the referrals you get end up being confetti, what I call confetti, because they're not always technical, are they? The guys that want these applications, they are entrepreneurs in their very own right. They are very clever individuals. They've got the potential to make some serious money, but they haven't really got any development experience. And without that, sometimes it is difficult to get over exactly why they need a discovery phase, because as you say, we're engineers, we're software engineers. We have to look at every single piece of the jigsaw to develop what they need to develop. And
Yeah.
I think you're right what you say. It's, you wouldn't, and using another analogy of yours, you wouldn't build a house without an architect. Or if you did, there's going to be problems later on.
Yeah, I mean, just to push that analogy, I was thinking about it, and there's something we've been doing recently that frames it really well. Is like, in answer to your question, would you build a house without an architect? Would you lay the first brick? And they say no, and then you go, well, why not? And they go, because I know where I want things, and I know I've got like a specific vision. And that's the reason, like, you need to impart. So even one of the things that we've been burnt at in the past is we've skipped our process and it's never ended well. And, like, we're a software development company. We've been going 13 years. We've got bad stories in our locker. We've got the pain and the hurt of doing things wrong. And one I remember really vividly was a spec came in. So someone had gone through discovery with another company and they were coming to us as like a new supplier. And here's a spec. I don't need to do it again. So they were in a panic. It was urgent to them. So I felt the need to please and the kind of, I will keep that momentum of urgency. We skipped the process of really doing the deep dive. And we don't know when that spec has been created, the questions that have been asked. So we took the spec as though that was gold. We then quoted against it. We started working with it. When things started to go wrong early on, you then start to say, well, why did the development company who did this spec not go ahead with that client? And we've had, we used to use a term called injured lambs, where we would take these battered and bruised prospects who'd been, mistreated by, another development company. It's always the development company's fault. And you quickly learn it takes two to tango. It's like, and now we're actually really wary. Whereas before we used to be all open arms and, we'll help you, we'll nurse you back to health, sort of thing, in a weird analogy. But
Yeah.
I think it's been it's healthy to be skeptical. It's healthy at the start of any working relationship to assume that you know nothing, and actually the only way that you and your team are going to discover the truth and kind of what actually they don't need to build is a big part of discovery phase. It's working out what is the essential items, therefore what you don't need to waste time and money on. You can get to launch quicker. So yeah.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we've had a couple of bad experiences, but not really in the last 4 or 5 years. It's more in the first sort of 10 to 15 years where we first started. We built a SaaS application for a friend, and I won't name names. And as a favour, we started the project on a very loose spec without charging for the discovery phase. It was a back of a fag packet type concept, Paul. I remember doing it exactly like that, and it was an interesting project. But she wanted to move it really, really fast to production. It was entrepreneurial in the fact of what it needed to do. So that's why we took it on, and we were supporting and maintaining it. The request for new features started rolling in, but things hadn't been thought through properly at the start. So phase 1 was perfect, worked really well, but then obviously they wanted to have extra things in year 2 and 3. And because we hadn't scoped those things out clearly, it got to a point where we observed a full rewrite was required. And unfortunately, that's where the project was taken off from us. And although interestingly, because I've still got access, they're still using the same code base.
Yeah.
But the most disappointing part for me, it strained the relationship because we did it at a heavily reduced rate, proper mates rates, and not once did we get a thank you for that. And it just goes to show that skipping the discovery phase, even with the best intentions, which they were with us, almost always leads to problems. And it's not about charging more, because people say, oh, are you charging? See, what we do in a lot of situations, Paul, is we'll say, you pay for your discovery phase and it comes off the coding phase if you go forwards. Because we've done all that work. We've sat down with all the developers, the project managers. We've looked into what the scope what the actual project needs to do. So therefore, it's only fair that we get paid for that work as we go back to the architect, gets paid for the drawings. Doesn't necessarily mean that the actual house gets built at the end of the day anyway. And that's a similar thing with us. And so super important that we lock in with the customer what is required. And we always then, at the discovery phase, if it goes forward, then we'll obviously have a contract. Because as you say, then there's no design creep that can happen. Or if it does happen, it's chargeable, or there's another proposal or another spec that goes out for that extra piece of work.
Yeah, definitely. And I think when you're talking about de-risking it as well, like how can you provide like a guaranteed outcome if you don't lock in the requirements?
Yeah.
Things change, they always change, but everyone's on the same page and everyone's agreed what the deliverable is. So if there needs to be a fundamental pivot halfway through development, there's no cloud, there's no grey area, is there? It's like, okay, so we would reset and stuff. But I think what you've just said is spot on, is you can take it off the overall investment. I would also say that the overall quote that gets created 9 times out of 10 would be more accurate, and in some instances way cheaper, because you actually determine that you don't need to build out this 2-year development cycle. You can deliver something in 3 months, So I think it's win-win all round. I mean, you were talking about analogies and stuff. A cheesy thing that I've started doing is, and I'm embarrassed to share this, but the futuristic film The Matrix, the red pill, the blue pill.
Oh yeah.
So I use the discovery phase as my red and blue pill. So you can kind of take the blue pill and get a free quote and hope it covers what you need, or you can take the red pill and invest in discovery, see the full picture, and build something that actually works and gives you the outcome that you want. And honestly, like every successful project we've ever started has had the red pill at the start. It's like.
No, I like that analogy. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do still occasionally now, if before, when I'm talking to a customer, if the budget is really, really important, then I may just put out a price that, because as you rightly say, we've done. I mean, you said you've done over 150 projects now.
Yeah.
We've done a fair number, and as you rightly say, there's experience there. There's probably similar projects you've done before. So if it's really a quote they want, and potentially I'm probably not going to hear from them again, I might just literally fire out a price. But I'm going to say, look, at this stage it is just a finger in the air price.
The discovery phase as well is a qualifier genuinely for how serious they are.
Yeah.
Because it's very easy to ask anybody for a quote. You can probably call out a tradesman every day of the week if you wanted to come and quote you on some form of property maintenance, and they'll happily come out and they'll happily quote you. And it's like we're not in a business where we can do that every day. It's not part of our pipeline. It's not what we do. We work with almost like a boutique. We work with a set number of clients a year, and it's all about quality. It's not about cheap and fast. It's about aligning. And I think the thing that happens with the discovery phase is it also aligns values. So the core values of each business get exposed through the questioning and through their approach to it. So I think there's a lot of like alignment that happens during that phase beyond the technical. You have a vested interest in what does success look like? What are you actually trying to do here? Rather than just tell me, you want a piece of technology and you want it to do X, we will ask why. Why is that important, and why do you think that's a solution? And it could be that through one of our other projects, like you said, there's a vast amount of projects. We've done something instead that they haven't even considered and seen great results from it. So it's, I think, as well, they're leveraging on your experience to guide them. At the end of the day, I'd say all of our clients are non-technical. They're experts in their industry. They understand their subject matter. We enjoy learning about different businesses and different industries. I'm always amazed by the compliance they have to jump through. Adhere to, sorry. And the, just that it's even a business, and it's like, wow, that's blown my mind that that's what you do day in, day out. And then they're coming to you as the guide, the mentor, sometimes the counselor, to help them through this process. So it's so much more than just, a quote PDF that says it's going to cost you.
Yeah, and also, I'm taking this example I've got this week. It's not just a one-hit project. It's going to be phased, isn't it? It's
a partnership. It's a long-term relationship is what you're really after. If you're any kind of, Yeah, I mean, again, going back to the two fingers in the air thing, there's like, you can either be a one and done shop, can't you? Where it's about volume and it's like we sell X and we just need volume and there's nothing wrong with that. Or you're a partnership and you're actually on a business journey with that business to help them grow, to implement something that's going to have a profound impact. And as you know, like most of the systems that you develop become the core part of their business.
Yeah.
It's you're not building something on the side that's just like, oh, a one-off marketing thing. It's like it drives their entire business. And I do see that if you skip these critical processes, it's a disservice. You know, you're actually not helping them. And we've probably all been in front of prospects who talk to them, and they're after a third quote, and they've already got one that's £2,000, and they've got one that's £25,000, and they're questioning themselves why there's such a big gap. And it's like, well, clearly there's a communication gap. It can only be that you're not quoting like for like, and even though you might give them the same brief, the way people interpret it and their experience will be very different. So, yeah, there's lots of like warning signs and stuff, and I think this leads us on to, have you got any of it, or do you remember any of those moments where you're like, oh, it's going down this route again, and how you've kind of,
well, as I say,
stuff,
just going back to that friend that was a very, very successful SaaS application that we built, and so I've got to be very careful. I can't name names, but that application was sold as well. So it was just really the fact that what we do now, as I say, we can look at a project now, and we could say to customers, phase 1 is X, phase 2 is Y, and obviously, as you say, it's a partnership. That's what we should have done with that particular client. It was a very successful project in the fact that it delivered what it needed to do off the back of the fab packet. But then obviously once the business was running and it was bringing lots of customers, then obviously the enhancements came in and there was a ceiling on that level of development. So it needed a recode. Now, actually, really, the amount of money that it generated, it could have paid for the rewrite. So that wasn't really the issue, but it was just the fact that I had to clearly learn that, as you rightly say, Paul, whatever potential prospect comes through those doors, this is the best approach. The discovery phase, an MVP, get your ducks in order at the start before you start the coding is the holy grail for software development.
I think I'd chip in there that, like, knowing you as I do, and obviously I know my own company, it's like you said, it's the best approach. It's got to the point of GGA now where it's the only approach. Yeah. Like, we will literally part as friends after an introductory call, and I will even signpost them to companies that I know that will operate in that fashion because we're not a fit. But yeah, I mean, fundamentally, it's the only way to work with us is to enter into the discovery phase. That important to like de-risking, understanding the full picture. And I think that the big wake up call I've had is the spec created elsewhere. That's been the biggest thing. That's been the red flag, so to speak. Is like we've probably had tens of them over the years where somebody's coming with a very defined spec. But because we are not party to the questions that were asked and how you've created this, and there's no relationship anymore with the spec creator, that's the other thing. But they're still holding on to it and after quotes. So, and you always have to say, well, what happened to the person who created the quote and why aren't they involved? And yeah, fundamentally, I think we insist on it is when you said best approach, that's what sprung into my mind is we insist on running our own discovery, full stop. And over the years, we've built and refined. I'll share this with you after sure. We've built like a 9-step framework now. So a client knows exactly which pocket they're in or which step of our process. And it goes from discovery all the way through to like post-launch maintenance, So, and the way I explain that to people is, the first 3 steps are all discovery. They're your architects. That's like your engineering planning thing where it's so much easier to change it on a wireframe, so much easier to change it on paper or in a database that hasn't been created yet and have the flexibility.
So just stopping you there then. So just the wireframe. So In your discovery phase, is it all textual or is it
No. So
images and
yeah,
sort of
so
wireframes?
there's 3 steps just in discovery. I think there's about 10 different deliverables that we create and get signed off, and they include things like Figma, wireframes, stuff like that. But a big part of it is we run workshops. So we run workshops with different stakeholders. I'm doing one at the moment. There's 3 lots of workshops on site at their premises with 3 lots of different parts of the leadership team or the stakeholders. And we just have a framework that we've developed over the last decade to go, this is so important. We're not just going to, I'm not going to turn up to a discovery meeting and run it ad hoc. I know that this process works, and I'd be doing them a disservice if I didn't put everyone through the same process. So the first 3 steps of our thing are the architects. The next 3 are the build. So it's literally the builders going on site and executing the plan. And then the final 3, you've already touched on it, is your property maintenance crew, the people who are looking after upgrades, the security of the building. So I use the building analogy. Never worked in the building trade, construction. I don't even know if that's correct, but I tear it up like that. At every stage, you want architects, you want builders, and you want maintenance. And then as you go through your roadmap, that is the stuff that you won't develop as part of your MVP. That's where it goes through again. So later on down the line, when you create a new change request or a feature of significance, it goes back to the architects, because the architects need to look at the whole piece and go, okay, where's the change risk in this? If we implement this feature, how is that going to adversely or positively impact on what's already there? And like when you talk about rewrite, it's exactly that. Like you need to refactor code, you need to optimize code. So all 3 departments in that weird analogy are at play, and they need to talk to each other. And you need to have discovery. I think the key thing we're talking about today really is, whilst the initial contact might be you need to pay for a spec in a really crude way, and these are the reasons why, discovery never stops. So if you do anything like monthly roadmap reviews of your clients, or you hold even a change request meeting to discuss a new feature, a tiny amount of it should be discovery again. You should be asking why, and you should be asking the questions that they haven't thought of, because, in a world of AI, going back to last week's topic, where the question and the existential crisis of what's the role of a software developer in 2025 and beyond is, we know the questions to ask. That's where we hold the power, and we know how projects are developed and are successful. And it's a very different thing from just going and saying to an AI no-code platform, build me this. And
the fact that in the discovery phase, you're going on site, asking questions. And you mentioned as well, you like to understand about what the business does.
Yeah.
That's something that AI will always struggle with.
Well, AI will currently, and I'll only say the word will only answer the questions you ask. So the power has to be a human in control. I mean, that's a critical thing for our own existence as a species. But it needs to be, and this is what prompt engineers are, right? So prompt engineering didn't exist 3 years ago, really. It's now a very, very high paid position, but the person doing it has the experience to ask the right things and to build the right prompts and stuff. So it's like, the human is always got to be in control of it. AI is a productivity tool. And that's why you could, and in your analogy of where do you put the sink in the garden and all this sort of stuff, you put 3 people in front of a no-code platform and get them to build the same brief, you'll get 3 very different outcomes. And that's only exacerbated when you get to bespoke. And that's why discovery exists. So
Paul's going to, after this podcast, put his gold into the messaging to show exactly how they do the discovery phase. I mean, it's certainly more complicated than we do, but it is interesting because, as I say, we're at university when we were all doing computer science, etc. This sort of stuff wasn't really.
I don't think it's still taught. I think it's skipped, isn't it? Like if you are going to university today, I mean, I have no grounds for this, but if I talk about my developers and their experience and their education, mine when I went to university for computer software, they didn't once talk about how to get a brief.
No.
It's all about how to code the language.
It was
the coding of the language is the thing that's most under threat. That's like that is the thing where you need to level up. And we go back to the CEO, email from Fiverr and what we talked about there. And it's like, I think people really have to understand that as humans, we need to be working on the hard things. And sometimes the hard thing is actually stepping back and asking questions and understanding and trying to understand this business from a very high level when you know very little about it. And it all boils down to what we'll kind of wrap up at the end, but it all boils down to results. So there's an analogy that I used to say that I've worked out is incorrect. So I used to say, nobody wants the drill, they want the hole in the wall. But they don't. Nobody wants a hole in the wall. They want the piece of art that they put on the wall that gives the emotion. So in our world, nobody wants software. This is the reality. Nobody wants any software in their business. What they want is the outcome that it will give them. And typically that's more profit, more sales, more leads. Those are like, or drive down
less
costs.
time spending on a certain task.
Cost, things like that.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the discovery phase and when you're talking to clients, your language and your understanding has got to be the outcome. What, it doesn't matter whether they're spending £500 or £500,000. Your responsibility is to understand the North Star, the outcome. What are they trying to do? Then using your technical skills, you can determine the best way to execute that and to achieve it. So we always do it where a key part of our discovery phase now, and this is recent, is to create a number. So we have a North Star number that's the outcome, and every subsequent conversation is back to that North Star. Are we getting closer to it? So when a change request comes in, you can hold it up to the light and go, well, we can, here's a quote to do it, but how's that going to get you closer to that goal that you're trying to achieve? So I think it's really, and goals change and things like that, but I think it's really important that the discovery phase is not about tell a developer how to build something and just don't value their opinion. The discovery phase is about creating a technical department within your business that acts as the conduit between the technical and the commercial. And to do that requires time and investment and relationships. And that's really what discovery boils down to, is it's a shared belief that I value you, you value me and my time and our expertise. And together we're going to collaborate and create something that's going to make a genuine difference to your business. And one genuine outcome is they don't proceed. We've had that a few times as well. Like, you can get so accurate with the discovery phase and the process and actually come to a decision where the time's not right now. Or like we've had a few where, you're talking £100,000 plus project and the business owner's got the cash, but they're looking at the market and going, it's not the right time for us to invest that amount of money. We're going to delay. And then I touch base with them, like probably every 3 months and just go, how's it going? And they'll talk about different strategies and we'll have calls. But fundamentally, them paying to go through the discovery, in essence, saved them £100,000.
Yeah. Well, you either pay up front.
Yes.
Or
that's right.
you fix it later. But a quick one before we wrap up.
Yeah.
When someone pushes back and says, but other agencies do free quotes, you mentioned it earlier on, I just smile anyway now, Paul, and just think, well, many of those projects must overrun, they must miss the mark, must end up in awkward conversations about the scope. And another analogy of mine, it's like running a marathon in flip-flops. So technically, yes, you can go ahead and do it. As you said, you do know agencies that do it, but surely it's going to lead to problems later on. And I know you and me, Paul, we're old school now. We've been doing it for decades.
Right here.
And I suppose we don't need to chase the sale. So I suppose it depends on where you are in your business, because
I think
maybe in our early days, if we've been honest, maybe we did sort of do this kind of thing in the air price and then sort of take it on a whim and start building the project. But nowadays, I don't have any pressure saying no.
I think that's exactly right, and that's when I did it. Definitely, it's 100% when you're in startup mode, probably within the first 2 to 3 years of running a business. I think just you have to go through the pain of saying yes to everything, and you literally, something comes in and you're grateful for that lead coming in. Not that I'm not now, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like you're so grateful and you're so eager to please, and you don't have the experience of a project going bad yet, that kind of you'll say 3 bags full and we can do that and we can solve that. And in today's world, there's not a lot of things that tech can't solve, but it's how you execute the tech that will be the make or break of it. It won't be that software is bad. It'll be the way that it's been constructed and developed and executed. And I think you were saying about the fact that, what do you do if somebody comes to you now and they only want a free quote, or they've got it, somewhere else is offering a free quote and they could go ahead. You have to deliver it with humility, and you can't be, sarcastic with it, but it's pretty much, I'd recommend you go with them. Because if they can deliver exactly what you need and you don't have to pay for discovery, that sounds like an amazing thing. And I'd bite their arm off to get it, because that sounds incredible. So I think it's done with an element of, I'm not there to convince them. And I think this leads to a really important point, is I was thinking about, when did it really change for us? So we're going through a kind of startup infancy and a journey ourselves, and we're developing projects. And we always do at the end of a project, regardless of success or fail, like a retro. So what was good about the project? What will we change? And the thing that always came through was that it's not about the tech. It was about the people we were developing the software for. And then one day, and they're still a client today, and they know how much I love them. They are just the amazing client. They came to me and they expected to pay for a spec. And that changed everything. So for the first time, I didn't have a conversation where I was trying to, effectively convince the idea of a discovery phase, which is the wrong thing. It should be about selling the outcome, not it's never to sell discovery. Discovery is part of the process. But the fact I had somebody in front of me who was saying, we've got this, and they already had, I think they'd already employed a business analyst. They already had a 20-page spec, but they were expecting to then take that document to a professional software development company who would then turn it into the discovery documentation and deliverables. And that changed everything, because that makes you question as a business owner, and it probably applies to any business regardless of software, how do I find more of them? Because that is a transformational business relationship. And they're not looking over their shoulder going, am I getting value for money? They're not saying, why am I doing this step? Even if you've convinced them that they should do it, they value it. And that changed everything. And so I think that gave me the reassurance and the pat on the back to say, this is it, Paul. This is how you do it. This is what you need every future business that you embark with. And the thing that I've definitely learned, which is much, much deeper, is business is about matched core values. It's about alignment. So if your values are X and you partner with a supplier or a customer where they're completely the opposite, that will be a very tough relationship for the longevity. If one person focuses on quality and someone focuses on cheap and fast, and they're not just core values, that's just they're where they sit, you're going to have a very different experience as you go through your partnership. And they don't last very long, in my opinion. And you get to kind of loggerheads, and everything's a scrutiny and everything's a big deal. And so I think discovery, from both a client protection, which you said at the start, and from our own sanity and our own protection, is a test. It's a test to see if you ask the difficult questions, are they going to be honest back with you? And are they going to tell you everything you need to know, so that later on the unasked questions don't bite everyone?
It isn't about money. That's the fundamental part. It's about clarity. It's about us understanding what they're asking us to build. It builds the trust with the client as well. As you say, you should be asking questions. It's not necessarily they're going to understand what they're asking is correct either. It gets everyone aligned. It makes the delivery faster and smoother. And like I said before, it pays for fixing something later on. The fix is always going to be more expensive, as we probably know. So to wrap this up then, if you're still quoting for free out there, other software companies that are listening to this, I'd say rethink that approach, because trying to build something without a discovery phase is difficult.
Yeah, and if your discovery process is ultimately your credibility, it's how you prove your thinking, not just your tech.
And we'll drop links in the show notes to our discovery template and a few examples. You can certainly use it, steal it, and adapt it.
And if you found this useful, hit follow and leave us a review on the platform of your choice. It always helps others find us.
Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll see you next time.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.